Hello and welcome to the Leading Communities podcast, brought to you by Aspire for You CIC and produced by That's All Media CIC. We're on a mission to understand what it takes to help communities to start caring, keep caring, or care more about an issue.
Hi everyone, I'm Garfield from FNB Mentoring and Coaching, and I'm here with my business partner and friend, Steve.
Hi everybody.
Yeah, so today we're going to talk about mentoring and coaching and what it entails and how it works. I think we're going to start with an introduction. So Steve, do you want to introduce yourself and tell everyone who you are and how you came to become a mentor?
Yeah, well, what a story. Steve Brown, born and grew up in Walsall, got a long history of working for local authorities as much as anything else, but in amongst all that, always had an interest, particularly around working with kids and young people, from youth clubs, lots of work in residential care, and in the substantive day job, always had an interest really on safeguarding and child-related matters. So it's always been something that I've been really keen on, and 18 months ago, I left my substantive role within the council and just found that an opportunity presented itself, and through conversations with yourself and Ainsley, who unfortunately can't be with us today, kind of started to hopefully realise a long-standing aspiration to give something back to the community in terms of the support we can give to young people. So that's me in a nutshell.
So just a bit of background on me. So I'm Garfield. As Stephen said, we go way back. We'll delve into that a bit later on. I've worked in mentoring since 2003. I found it really, really useful, really important, and how the effect that you can have on young people and the difference that you can make to their lives. And then since then, I had various roles within education between then and 2019, before I left education, but I still had that desire and need to support and make a difference in young people's lives and where they were going and what they were going to do and how they would change. And then, as Steve said, 18 months ago, he left his substantive post, and we were casually having a chat while on a holiday, a weekend break in Lancaster, and the idea was born, and we came back from the weekend break, and then the wheels were set in motion, and then on the 21st of March 2023, FNB Mentoring and Coaching was born. And as you can see, we've come a long way.
Well, we like to think so anyway, but I think it's quite interesting because when anybody talks about mentoring, they often talk about coaching as well. And I think a lot of time the lines get blurred a little bit because they are somewhat interchangeable in as much as a lot of the skills and the goals, if you like, are the same and they're interrelated. But generally speaking, in terms of differences, there is a fundamental difference in the two. And I think with coaching, for example, it's a bit more about trying to support somebody and facilitate those type of conversations where the coachee can maybe find a headspace to develop, various skills or techniques or whatever to be able to manage situations better and to improve their performance. It's often work related, in that respect. So I think in terms of coaching, they talk about a lot more about, having smart targets where they're specific, measurable, achievable, they're realistic and they're time bound. And you set up, those goals and your aspirations to, I suppose, work towards that. Whereas I think mentoring's a bit different. In some ways, it's a bit more of a casual, informal relationship where you use your life experience a bit more, I suppose, in terms of giving direction and it can be a bit more specific if somebody comes to you with a problem or query and you have the answer. I think coaching sometimes kind of, you try and help them to work things out for themselves and develop techniques where they can move it forward. Whereas I think with mentoring, sometimes you can be a bit more direct in terms of giving them the direct support, the direct answers that they're actually looking for, and, that can work. But ultimately, as I said, they're both interchangeable and they're both designed to try and help the mentee or the coachee achieve their end aim, really, which is whatever goals or whatever that you set at the start of that process. So that's a kind of a sort of a snapshot version, if you like, of a primary difference in terms of the way we do it. Having said that, I think a lot of the way we work anyway, we interchange the two regularly anyway. So there's a bit of mentoring and a bit of coaching. Just depends on the needs of the individual client group that we're actually working with. So, and that's probably where we're coming from in terms of the difference between mentoring and coaching in terms of the world that we're operating in.
So would you analyze it by like leading a horse to water, and rather than expecting it to drink, and not having that idea that it's up to them, you kind of support them in getting a drink so that it survives, or you kind of show them how to drink. Would that work?
Well, but yeah, in some respects, it is. It's about, I don't know, to use your analogy, it's more about, helping somebody to coaching to find their own route map to actually get to the well or whatever. And it's like, well, they know they want to get to the well, they want the water, but how do they do it? On the one hand, you can just take them by the hand and lead them to it. On the other hand, you can kind of give them the tools to kind of say, well, actually, this is where you are now. If you assess the situation and work on your location, you can work out the route that you need to take to get to your end goal. That's kind of probably the way that, kind of I see it in my head anyway, for what that's worth, that's what happens. So
You're a reusable cup.
I've been called a few things and never a reusable cup, but I'll take that. I've been called a lot worse over the years, so that's pretty good.
I just thought I'd give just a shout out to the name. So FNB, it stands for forwards, not backwards, just in case anybody's wondering. And the analogy is that any time that you move forwards, you don't need to look back, because the momentum is always forwards.
Yeah. I think, that's really our philosophy, because everybody that we work with, everybody's got a story, everybody's got a background, everybody's got a history, and quite often the groups and the people we come across, they've had, lots of, be it trauma or difficulties, in their life, and a lot of it's about, you can't forget about what's happened,
but you get stuck.
Don't get stuck in the past, and don't dwell on it. So it's all about, I suppose, embracing, if you like, and accepting what's gone on, but focus on, what's to come in the future. So the name is really quite pertinent as far as we're concerned. It's simple philosophy, but I think it's something that we try and live by. It's not always easy, but you know what I mean? You try and, as I say, embrace or use the events of the past as positively as you can in order to try and, impact or influence the future. So now that's where we are, and that's what we hope to bring to the young people that we work with.
So you've just touched on it there, Steve. So just as a business, we work with 11 upwards, really. Our upper limit, we'd say, is 25, but the idea that we have in relation to working with young people, it's that it's between 11 and 18 where we feel as though you can make the biggest impact. And so that would be the mentoring side of what we do. And then from 18 upwards, we'd suggest that it was more of a coaching supportive measure rather than a mentoring measure. What do you say, Steve?
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, and the reason for that age group is around early intervention, and it's about offering support, because a lot of the mentoring sort of things that you do hear about, and again, we'll probably touch on that a bit later, I'm sure. It's kind of for people who have maybe got stuck in a system, whether or not it's a criminal justice system or just in a social or life cycle that has been quite disruptive, quite traumatic, quite negative. But the help that is generally out there is for them right at the end of that process, maybe, which in some respects is really useful. But our philosophy is kind of get in early with the early intervention to try and help prevent, sort of some of these youngsters actually going down slippery slopes in the first place. So that's why the earlier that I think you can get to them and start trying to speak to them and maybe changing mindsets and their approach to life and society, we feel we've got a better chance of making a lasting impact and help keeping whoever it might be on the straight and narrow. So, as I say, it's one of those, we do go across the board. And for our purpose, we do feel we probably have a skill set that means hopefully we could mentor anybody ultimately, or most people. That's the area of need that we're looking at focusing on at the moment.
So, qualifying for our service, it's a bit of a two-way street, really. You can refer yourself in. You can get a referral from an agency, school, social worker, local authority, police. So the referral system is you come to us, and then we will then do a sit-down conversation, and then the decision will be whether we think it will work for you. There isn't just because you've had a referral to us, that doesn't mean that we're gonna say that you'll suit us or we'll suit you. So we won't just take it on board just for the sake of it. We'll vet the young person and see if we feel as though we can support and help that young person to achieve whatever they're looking to achieve. And so in that respect, we don't just willy-nilly accept anybody. We're quite concerned about the end goal, and if we feel as though we can achieve something, we'll work with that young person. But if we don't feel as though we can achieve something, we'll quite happily say we don't think will work for you, but we can refer on to another agency that we think would be a lot better.
Yeah, I think what's really pertinent to what Garfield has just said as well is that there has to be a willingness from that individual to engage in the process, to work with us. So we could find that we get a referral in from an agency where they're asking us to work with somebody, which is all well and good because they might be able to see the potential benefit. But if that individual doesn't buy into the process, then it makes it very, very difficult then for you to actually build an effective or successful relationship. So, there is an element of having some sort of willingness of that individual to work with us. So again, if they're absolutely not interested in it, even if there's an opportunity for us to improve the business in a financial setting by getting money from somebody, that's not what we're about. So it has to be that two-way process in terms of the engagement or the willingness to try and engage from that young person as well.
100%. It's one-to-one sessions. It can be a group session. It can be it takes many forms, and the group sessions work often from agencies, and we're working with a group of young people within an education setting, within a YJS setting, or within any setting that suits that employs us to do this. And obviously we'll look at what we can do, what we can offer to that group, and how we think we can mentor them, coach them into doing things differently to what they're doing. Anything else, Steve?
No, I think that's that pretty much sort of sums up that side of it. I think with mentoring, in general, a lot of people do ask kind of what's the what's the point, what does it achieve, etc. And how do you measure, I suppose, impact and effectiveness of it? And to be honest, it's not always that easy to actually measure, particularly with mentoring, because mentoring, quite often can be a long-term process. So you could be mentoring somebody for months, years, even, in terms of that. Or in our case, I think a lot of the time, the work we do with the young people, it's perhaps not going to be, automatically visible, in terms of being able to evidence it. And it could be sort of years later or, sometime down the road before they realise the benefit of that mentoring. I mean, an example of that is sort of a little anecdote is that going back 20 odd years, I did some mentoring at a local school, Willenhall Comprehensive actually, but I don't know if I can say that officially, but I've said it, with a young girl, well, 2 or 3 young kids at the time, and it was great, it was enjoyable, it was fun, but obviously at the time that mentoring relationship ended, and I had no way of telling. They seemed to enjoy it, but you had no way of measuring it. But then sort of some 11, 12 years later, I got a random letter, completely out of the blue, sent to my workplace saying, I don't know if you still work there, but blah, 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 blah. And it was from a young girl that I mentored sort of, over a decade before. And she was telling me about how she turned her life around and she had got kids now and she did really well and she remembers those lessons, and I gave her the strength to kind of keep going when she was sad or whatever. And I know it sounds really quite dramatic, but that is probably one of the most impactful things I've ever read in my life. And it's one of the things that triggered or sort of reinforced, I suppose, my desire to kind of keep doing this type of stuff, and I don't think I've ever read anything in terms of correspondence that's really hit home quite as much in terms of the need and the ongoing need. And I don't think that need's got any less over the years.
If anything, it's got more.
And, absolutely. Now, I suspect, you've probably got more examples with the type of work that you've done.
So I'd say it's something that's it's that continual giving and that continual moments of rationale and moments of clarity when you think. Often within working, I mentored in an education setting for it. In reality, it was probably only as a learning mentor. I was there for 10 years, but within that time, it was only probably for about 18 months that I actually was a mentor. And what happened was that the roles changed within the school. They wanted me to be more involved, so I became more of a pastoral lead rather than a mentor. But within that, I still felt as though I was mentoring the young people that I came into contact with. So Ainsley, who's not here, we're often out and about in the gym, and we'll have young people coming up to me and saying, "Are you Mr. Meredith?" And I'll say, "Yeah, I'm Mr. Meredith." And they'll say, "You remember me?" I'll say, and it will trigger a memory, and they say, "You don't understand what you did." And I'm quite taken aback by it, because often the young people wouldn't necessarily have said that at the time. So, like Steve said, you can't see it at the time, and it's often something that comes back. But a more recent thing is where I'm spending time with a young person and taking him to taking him backwards and forwards somewhere. And he's starting to repeat back the things that we're talking about in the car, and he uses it as his own, as if it's his own words. And I'll say to him, "Are you quoting me here?" And he'll say, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." And I'm like, and it's nice to see it, and it's something that kind of you do knowingly as well as subconsciously, and it really warms the heart, and it's amazing. So one of the things that we're quite conscious of. And one of the things that we thought about when we were setting up, we had many a meeting, many a discussion about how we'd impact the community in Walsall. And one of the things that we were quite keen to show was that we know Walsall. It sounds like a bit of a boring statement, and it sounds like a bit of a nod at our history. But it's more to do with the fact that we know that there's a lot of mentoring services out there, and we know that there's a lot of mentoring services working within Walsall. But we've got more of a feel for the town. As Stephen said, he's born and bred Walsall. I moved to Walsall at the age of 9, and within that, it was a big change for me. I feel like I lost 2 years of my life because where the community that I moved from to was completely alien to me. It didn't fit me. I felt really out of place. I didn't fit in. And for 2 years of primary school, I felt lost. And then I went to secondary school, started at the wonderful Allenwell School, and I met this one and the other one, Ainsley. So when we talk about knowing Walsall, we're not saying it from a perspective that we've been in Walsall and we're trying to get to know the town and we know it because we've been here 5 minutes. We're saying we know it because Steve's been here for 56 years, I've been here for and I've been here for 47. So it's not something that we're saying that we think we know. We know. But at the same time as we're saying we know it, we know what we know from a 56-year-old perspective. We're not saying we know it from a young perspective, and we're constantly learning. We're constantly getting more information about today compared to our day. But we know that we know the town.
Yeah, I think that's right, and we often make comparisons between life for young people now compared to. I mean, it all sounds like it's the old people saying, "Oh, back in my day, yada 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 yada." But I guess we're at the stage now where we probably are those old people saying back in our day. But we have that scenario whereby when we grew up, there were issues. There were massive issues, in terms of. The need for social tolerance and social change, etc. I mean, and we went through lots of stuff, particularly in relation to racism, where it was a lot more probably overt, than it is now. We went through periods where there was, riots up and down the country. We lived through that. We were, in our sort of mid-20s when, Stephen Lawrence, got murdered. Lots of things that we went through, the openness, the overtness of the racism. So we definitely had issues that we had to deal with, there's no disputing that. But one thing that we were talking about earlier on is the difference for a lot of the kids today is that it's a lot more subtle, We could go out in town or whatever, we might get, a bit of racial abuse thrown at us, whatever it might be. But ultimately, we'd still go and try and enjoy our night because that's what we did. But we could get away from it to some degree where we'd go home, we'd lock the door, and then that'd be it, For those of us that are old enough to remember the old dial-up telephones, not like you had mobile phones or, social media or internet. literally you had one telephone that your parents probably put a lock on so you couldn't actually make a call or anything, and you had 3, and then when we went to 4 channels on the TV, it was like, you know, you thought you'd kind of died and gone to heaven. It was like 4 channels on the TV, but we could get away from it, whereas the pressure that the young people are under now, largely through, you know, the access to social media, it is horrendous, and there's no switching off for them. So part of our journey is to make sure that we probably understand and appreciate some of the difficulties, and we're not just stuck in, well, back in my day, because
it's the last thing they want to be.
We're not in their day, and they need to understand that we're at least trying to empathise and understand, you know, the societal issues that they're going through at the moment. Because only by doing that, I think, can we really kind of engage properly, you know what I mean, and actually offer them the support that they need. You know, the thing I was going to say, Garth, I mean, I don't know how you find it, but I think genuine communities are different, you know, in our days. And I think there were perhaps more unofficial mentors for kids back in our days, because a lot of our parents, you know, knew each other or knew of us. So you could be walking down the street, and if somebody that knew you or knew your parents saw you and you were, you know, not somewhere you should be or doing something, you'd know about it, you get told, and you get challenged and disciplined and all the rest of it. And I don't think that happens so much now, you know what I mean? It's like you talk to somebody else's kid, particularly if you're trying to sort of challenge them on something or whatever, then it creates such an issue, and the parents are like, you know, you can't talk to, you know, my child, etc. So I think the world has just changed so much, and it's important for us to understand that and, you know, move with it, which is one of the concerted efforts, you know, that we're trying to make in terms of staying relevant, I think, you know.
I think along with that, there was a good story that I remember from my nieces, and if they were ever in school, if they were on their way to or from school, and they were always concerned about seeing me and my brother, because if we ever saw them in town and they weren't on their way to school or from school, we would take them home. And so they were never in town. So it's quite ironic and interesting that you've made that statement. But then again, it still happens now. You see young people now, and there's still that respect, I suppose, and that looking up to people, and you can still have that conversation, particularly if you know their parents well. Yeah. And I mean, all of the siblings of our friendship group, you know, we're uncle. You know, it's an interesting one, and I know within other cultures and communities, uncle is a big respect that comes to you know, older generations, and when you are classed as an uncle to young people, it's a mark of respect. So, you know, and we'll take that every time.
I think it's really good, because, you know, you just mentioned there about the other community side of it, and that's something that I think for us, it's important to try and understand how things have changed, because when we were teenagers growing up in Walsall, I mean, the community, the demographics, very, very different, you know what I mean? You still had, you know, a significant number of Asian, be that, you know, Indian or Pakistani origin, but the majority of the black people, for example, in and around Walsall, I would say the vast majority were of Caribbean descent.
Yep, 100%.
You know what I mean? Now, you look at the demographics of Walsall now, it's very different. You know, obviously you've still got significant sort of, you know, Southeast Asian, you know, sort of part of the population, you know, but the black population has changed considerably in terms of, you know, the increase in, say, the people of sort of African origin, you know, coming across, for example. And, you know, it's quite funny. We were saying this the other day in terms of 40 years ago, if you're walking in Walsall and you saw a white person, for example, you'd hear probably a black country Walsall accent or whatever. But now, you'd hear there's a raft of Eastern European. I ain't going to even pretend to suggest I could understand, or identify the various, languages, because, unfortunately, my ignorance is such that I just don't have that ability. But it just shows how different, Walsall has become. And as such, I think, the needs are going to be much more varied. And I think that's why, although at the moment we're doing a lot of work concentrating on supporting black and dual heritage boys, do feel that there is a desperate need to provide mentoring and coaching support right across the piece.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And there's just not sufficient support out there, I think, to effectively do that.
And within that, we just to emphasize that point, we are a mentoring and coaching business, and we have a speciality because we are three black men that we do obviously have a supportive need and an idea and empathy, more of an empathy with black and mixed heritage boys. However, it isn't our be all and end all. We are mentors firstly, and we're black mentors as well, which means that we do have that commonality, but we are able and we do mentor everyone, boys and girls, any background.
Yeah, I mean, what you said earlier on about the mentoring support, that is currently provided, the vast majority of mentoring support that's offered in Walsall at the moment is supplied by people, as you said, coming into the area, not really being familiar, not having that same kind of relationship, Is mentoring and coaching, is it as acknowledged and recognised as perhaps it should be? You know what I mean? I mean,
Good
obviously, from our point of view, we'd obviously say no, and it's the reason why we're doing what we're doing. But, there's very little evidence to suggest that it's universally supported as an important, element of society moving forward. I mean, in your context, with the other stuff that you juggle, I mean, I don't know if you found the same or...
Yeah, absolutely. So the whole raft of people and the need is there. I think the services that are available are quite, they're not often from the area, which doesn't help. There's a definite landscape for need. I also work for Walsall Youth Justice day to day. So within that, there's the conversations happen so often, and mentors are mentioned, and I have to try and not be as forthcoming with pushing the brand. So I've got to be as, backwards in coming forwards, and thankfully we do have a bit of a way in, which has been formed prior to me working for Youth Justice Walsall. But there's a definite need. There's a definite avenue for us supporting that changes, and we're also discussing many things with many different networks and many different organisations where we're within the conversation now, which is, I think, is massive.
Yeah, because I mean, one thing that people have asked previously is kind of what help or support or resources are there to support mentors and coaches, and quite frankly, I don't think there's a huge amount out there, or if there is, it's not very visible, which in itself is a significant issue. So it's kind of difficult. It's a bit like, this concept of, well, okay, how important is, like, say, a formal qualification, for example? You know what I mean? Like, in terms of, mentoring or coaching, have you got to have letters after your name or whatever, to be considered appropriate or relevant? And I don't know, perhaps I'm a little bit controversial. I don't know if it's controversial, but for me, absolutely great if you can get the formal qualification in any of those areas, because it just kind of, I suppose, just solidifies or verifies your existence, in terms of maybe some of the formal stuff you're capable of. But at the same time, I actually think that it can be quite prohibitive because there's not that many formal coaching qualifications out there. A lot of them take a lot of time. A lot of them actually cost a lot of money to actually, put yourself through and get it. There's limited support, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of the financial side of it. But what it's doing is, it's by definition taking away sort of one of the best natural resources we've got, which is the community itself, So it's about, rather than concentrate on, well, has Fred got letters after his name, or has he done a formal coaching qualification? It's, well, actually, we've got, literally thousands of potential mentors and coaches in the community. Let's do some work about empowering them to step up and take some more responsibility, because if we can actually do that, a lot of the, what I call soft mentoring and soft coaching, is done on a day-to-day basis, in homes, walking past somebody on the street, in the park or whatever. Yeah, it doesn't really get acknowledged, but the social value of that, can potentially massively outweigh having half a dozen organisations who can say, look, we've got some letters after our names. So, I'm not trying to undermine, those that do go down that route, or the importance and significance of it. Absolutely, needed in certain areas, but to have an over-reliance on that, really dangerous when you've got so many good people out there that have got life experience, that they can use and share and impart. To me, that's the ultimate in terms of, what community mentoring, and coaching should be about. Whether or not we'll ever get there, who knows? I'm hopeful that we can get a lot closer than we are now, but it's going to take some realisation from the powers that be, and that's going to be the likes of your local authorities in particular, to kind of recognise the validity of it, and actually put resources in place to support people to be able to pursue that if they have an inclination to do so. So, sorry, that's a bit of a soapbox moment for me, but it just annoys me that so much talent is being ignored, yet with fairly minimal support and encouragement, they can make a difference. So.
And just to emphasise, Steve isn't for a second suggesting that he hasn't got the qualifications or the understanding to do it. We're trying to create more of a broader stroke of trying to make it so that there's more people that are available within communities to be able to mentor young people within the community. Because to be fair to them, they may even be able to have bigger impact than we can have. Yeah. So the idea of them being available and a resource that we can tap into is something that we feel strongly about, and as part of our development of what we're doing, that's something that we're looking to do in the not too distant future.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that, because it's one of those, we're looking, as much as we've had the opportunity to do some formal qualifications in some respect or whatever, but that's not to say we're necessarily going to be any better at producing, results than lots of other people out there.
Jim from the Chippy.
Yeah, absolutely, old Jim. Yeah, good bloke, Jim. Yeah, knew his dad, but it's one of those. So yeah, there's a lot going on, and still a lot to do, and hopefully, it gets some more formal recognition. I mean, one of the conversations we were having earlier with Ainsley was around whether or not the government will recognise, the value a bit more, and actually put a bit more resource into it. It's already in education to a degree.
Yeah.
Whether or not there's sufficient resources within the education system, probably not.
No.
I suspect almost certainly not. But, without that formal structure where it may well need to come from legislation, because that may then force the hand of local authorities to recognise, the importance, and if they potentially going to be held to account about it, you've got more chance of them, putting a bit more time and resources. And I'm not knocking local authorities, because I worked with it for over 30 odd years. I know what money's like and how difficult it is, and everybody wants a piece of the pie. But from a selfish point of view, in terms of the mentoring, their support could be invaluable, even if it is, going back to what I said earlier on, trying to do a bit more work within the community to kind of promote that informal stuff, to help support our young people generally. So, sorry, I'm getting climbing back on my soapbox here, so I'm gonna try not to, and get off.
And I also think that within that as well, there is the good chance that there's going to be a change at the top of government. So that would be something that we'd ask that whoever is in charge, that they put the right emphasis on the need for mentoring. One of our current mentees, his statement to me quite early on was, "Why hasn't everybody got a mentor?" And that stuck with me. That really stuck with me, because it's it makes sense. And there are many mentors out there with many different guises, and I think that we are an undervalued resource that is so important to support young people who are in need of guidance, who are in need of support, who are in need of that constant, that regular person, that reliable person that turns up when they're supposed to turn up. Because one of the drawbacks, I suppose, one of the things that the hurdles that you have to get over within the system is that as interested as they are with being mentored, getting them there is often an issue, and sometimes you just have to keep being there, keep turning up, and having the conversation with the member of staff who's supposed to have let them know that they were supposed to be there. Well, I did let them know, but they haven't turned up again, but that's okay, because I'm going to be here at the allotted time next time. And then what happens, what we've seen is that when they know you're there, it's great, but then when you're not there because it's ended, that's when they need you the most, and that's when they're looking to find you. And it's one of those interesting catch-22 situations where we know that the need is there, and then not often, but when it does happen afterwards, we know that there's still that need, and I don't think the door should ever be closed. I think it should always be an open door where they can always come back, and there isn't any massive issue with the fact that they weren't ready then. Whenever they're ready, we're ready.
Yeah, I think it's one of those, it's a strange kind of world we're kind of working in, isn't it, really? Because you enter it because you want to make a difference, you want to make a change, but it can be incredibly frustrating at times. So I think one of the key things in terms of, for anybody thinking about going into it, is, I suppose, be prepared, because you need to be resilient. I think resilience is kind of probably a really good word in terms of what you're trying to do, because as Garfield just said, you will get lots of setbacks. There'll be times when you maybe not get the responses or the obvious sort of engagement that you're hoping for. But I think resilience is the key, because you've got to keep going back, because it might take that 10th attempt or that 20th attempt or that 30th attempt to engage with somebody for the penny to drop for them to say, well, actually, this isn't somebody who's just here for their own gain or not really interested. They obviously care because they keep coming back, and they keep, wanting to sort of just offer, that support. And sometimes you don't even have to be saying anything much.
Yeah.
Just turning up, having a casual conversation, knowing you're there, makes a massive difference to them. And I think if you go into it with the mindset that you want to change the world in 2 or 3 sessions, then maybe it's not quite, the
good luck.
Absolutely. But if you go into it thinking, right, I'm going to keep going till I can't, till they stop, or there's got to be a good reason not to keep trying, and they see that. Now, you don't always realise at the time, but as we've alluded to earlier on, people will come back and they will, either that individual will acknowledge it, or sometimes the people that they're around, whether or not it's family or work people, school, whatever it might be, they'll recognise it and they'll say, actually, it's clearly making a difference. So just because it's not always obvious immediately, just persevere, you know what I mean? Because it does make a difference, and we're kind of living proof that it does make a difference, because we're getting it, and that's one of the things that keeps us going. And when we're having sort of difficult times, sort of, there's one thing that just come to me, sort of jumping around a little bit, that I kind of perhaps could have said at the start, in terms of our background. A lot of mentoring, particularly when you're dealing with people that have had issues and been involved in the criminal justice system or got caught up in that, you found that most of the mentors out there are often people of a certain age who have been through certain things, and quite often they're people that have been caught up in the criminal justice system themselves, had lived experience of doing all that, gone down a certain path, but with help, support, realization, whatever it might be, they've managed to turn their lives around, and they're really good examples to some of the kids that are in the system now or been through the system, say, look, it is doable. You know what I mean? You might have had difficulties, you might have gone down that path, but you can turn your life around, and there's a place for that, and it's great. I guess where we're different is that we, touch wood, you know what I mean, have never been caught up in the criminal justice system in that respect. Sometimes you wonder how we managed to dodge all those bullets, over the years, but we have. But I suppose we're just 3 examples of many out there, I'm sure, where you can say, actually, you know what, you can do all right. You don't have to have gone through all that to get out the other end. You can make a life for yourself. You can, live a sort of do an honest living, navigate all these problems with difficulties. Everybody has that, but you can do it. You don't have to go all the way down that slippery slope in order to sort of be reasonably sort of successful at the end of the day. I mean, and we're not sitting here as multimillionaires, far from it, but at the end of the day, we're living proof that it is doable. We had difficulties growing up, stuff we lived through, but we worked through it. A good group, social group of family and friends that, we were very, very fortunate. We know not everybody's lucky enough to have that, but there are people out there that can help you, can support. It's just a matter of reaching out, and engaging with them and engaging with us. And we're not even extolling our virtues particularly. It's not about, forwards, not backwards necessarily as an organisation. It's about the concept of mentoring and coaching and the value it brings, and everybody, pretty much can benefit from some level of mentoring and coaching. You just need to reach out and take the opportunity, and we hope in time, like local authority and stuff like that, will recognise that and help support and grow the industry, really.
One of the things that we're quite keen to develop further is our working within education. We've got quite a lot of links within schools, but at the moment, I think a lot of the mentors within the schools within Walsall are not from Walsall. We've got good knowledge and good understanding of what schools need. We also have a good idea and understanding of what we can do to support schools and the young people that attend the schools within Walsall. For our lived experience, we all came through the education system in Walsall. We all know. I worked in education in Walsall for 10 years. Left, came back, and then did another 2 years. So I don't know why, but there's a draw keeps bringing me back. It's a bit of a Godfather. No, is it a Godfather quote? Is it? No, no, it's another film, but we're not going to go on there. But yeah, I thought I was out and it dragged me back in. But yeah, so I keep coming back to Walsall for some reason. So education in Walsall, we know that, just to say, this is a bit of a shout out to education in Walsall. We're here, we're available, and we think that we can deliver something that your schools need, and please get in touch. We also feel that there's a need for us, and our USP, if you like, is that we're from here. And Steve?
Yeah, I think that. I think part of the moving forward as well is it's about challenging the existing norms, if you like, and forcing those difficult conversations. Some of the stuff that you talk about around, mentoring, and more specifically around kids that are experiencing a whole host of issues, environmental, social, physical, financial, whatever it might be. There's lots of difficult conversations to be had around how do we get involved and support those young people better. There's engagement that needs to be had, and is starting with the police, for example. One of the things particularly pertinent for Walsall, bearing in mind the massively high disproportionate number of black and mixed heritage kids that are actually currently in the criminal justice system in Walsall, is absolutely horrendous. That is been acknowledged by the local authority, in terms of youth justice, but also, perhaps more importantly in some respects by the police, who have, doing a lot of work, in fairness to them, to develop their race action plan. I'm not saying that it's the answer, but it's the start. So we need to have those difficult conversations where we challenge the police, and fortunately, sort of as things stand, albeit they might whip them away and change it, before we know it. But the police head at the moment, superintendent, seems very engaged, in the process, which
I've never known.
Yeah,
I've never known that.
I think it gives us hope. I've sat for 30 odd years listening to, in various capacities, listening to police talk about the issues that there are in the communities and what they need to do to change or whatever. And a lot of it has just come across as lip service, to be perfectly honest with you. But for the first time in my memory, there seems to be a bit more substance and sincerity in the conversations that we're having. Doesn't mean we're there. And the good thing at the moment about the police is that they're not shying away from those conversations, and they're inviting the challenge. So in terms of moving forward, those conversations need to be had, and need to be actioned. So between, I think, like the police and the local authorities, we just need to get a bit better buy-in from them, and tell them to support, not necessarily FNB, but people like us who do want to get involved and want to change, there's got to be an easier route, to be able to sort of, I suppose, engage in input. So I would say is that it doesn't even have to be a legislative thing, but it needs to be a change in mindset in terms of, local authority in particular, and the value and benefit of that. That together with work in schools, I think will go a long way to addressing some of the disparities that we're actually facing at the moment.
100%.
So with that in mind, I think we're just about done, but, taking it full circle, coaching, it's really valuable. There are a few organisations, formal organisations you can go to look at. If you go online, there's always, short courses available.
Taster sessions.
Which is, just to dip your toe in the water, see if it's for you. Because it's not for everybody, I can't lie. You know what I mean? You do need to be of a certain ilk, I think, as I say, to be able to do it. But certainly we find it really rewarding, not financially particularly at the moment, but in terms of, how we feel about ourselves and, what we're contributing and giving back to the community. There's formal organisations like Institute of Learning Management, for example, that, will give you guidance and support on avenues to pursue for mentoring and coaching.
Walsall College are running some sessions. There's a free taster session next month. We'll have the details of that on our website. But one of the things that we know is that there is free opportunities, and I'd also say volunteer. Offer yourself up if you're interested in wanting to know more about it and find out more. Approach a mentoring organisation, speak to them. I had a conversation last week with a young lady who was interested in mentoring, and I'm sure that I hope that I was useful to her. But we're available. Our door is generally open, so we are here. We're trying to build something. We're trying to move things forwards, not backwards. I like
what you did there.
and we are Steve, Garfield, and Ainsley. There are three of us. Ainsley wasn't able to make it today, but we are FNB Mentoring and Coaching. FNB stands for Forwards, Not Backwards. And thank you for your time, and hopefully you've learned something new today.
Take care, guys. Cheers.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to keep up to date with all things leading communities. You can follow Aspire for You at A4UCIC. To follow That All Media, search at That All Media. You can also join us on Facebook at Leading Communities Podcast.